teaching, I went to the University of Virginia, and as a student there, I had an opportunity to participate with the NAACP. And my first role with the NAACP UVA chapter was education chair. And working with the NAACP, working with Charlottesville, high school and middle school, as well as the Albemarle region, I saw very early on that there was a lot of disparity between the city schools and students who had to be bused in. And in particular, I recall going to a school board meeting where the Dean of African American Affairs at UVA had a very tense relationship with the school board of Charlottesville. And at that particular meeting, he made several references to the school board not providing students with equity and equitable access to textbooks, to course materials. And from there, I started to get this inclination that, okay, so this is important. And from that experience, I've been working with education ever since in terms of just helping with eliminate the disparity between students of color and their peers. And then in the District of Columbia, of course, we have a lot of gentrification that's taking place. And so I just recall, my peers. I went to public school all my life up until the point where I had a chance to receive a scholarship to go to a private high school. And I had left being the top of the top at my public school, but when I got into the private school, I was back at the bottom. And so that experience, coupled with my experience at UVA, I just found that teaching was something that was going to be very impactful to ensuring that we had an equal playing field.
I'm Alex Reese. I'm the resident principal here at KIPP. I had a similar, I went to public school through 12th grade, and I remember landing at a private college with a scholarship, which was wonderful. But then realizing that freshman year, when I looked at that first report card, not necessarily letters that I was familiar with, and I remember thinking, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Like maybe like what I thought was a really stellar public school hadn't adequately prepared me. But then as I progressed and persevered through all of that, I remember appreciating how much my high school did create opportunities for service and to serve others. And I knew that would be part of the path. And then it was just figuring out what I wanted to do. So I initially started thinking I wanted to do international development work. And so I worked in the Philippines for a short period of time. And I remember at one point thinking that the schools in a one-room schoolhouse in the middle of the rural area in the Philippines, the education being delivered there was better than some of the public schools that I'd seen in Durham, North Carolina, where I went to school. And just thinking, wow, like maybe we have work to do at home. So then did some work with nonprofits and landed very happily in Baltimore. And Baltimore is now home. Started as a teacher here. So why KIPP? This was the first job. Started as a teacher here, and since then have become a leader here. But it's a wonderful thing to have been here as long as some people who you might because now I'm at a place where I know kids who, when I taught them, they were 10, and now they're about to go to college, and just seeing that like come full circle is really, really awesome. And then why do I stay at KIPP Baltimore? A huge part of that is the touch points that we have with students after they graduate and the support that we provide after students graduate, which is pretty unique. There aren't a whole lot of middle schools that would say that they have a counseling or guidance department that follows kids all the way until they're 22 years old. So that's one of the reasons why I love this place, and I'm glad that I landed here.
I think we all are familiar with the prison to pipeline concept, which is that if a student is receiving a poor education, then the students, their likelihood of going into prison and the penitentiary system increases. To deter that, to try to combat that statistic, making sure that students understand that if they have exposure, well, first off, make sure that they have exposure. So I think the greatest thing that we can do for our students is to show them and plant the seed that you can actually go to school. And that, for a lot of communities, especially within Baltimore, may be a shift. And so what KIPP wants to do is ensure that the same way that there may be institutions that are looking to track students to see whether or not they will progress and matriculate into a college or into another institution, that we are for sure that we are able to give our students access to quality education and then resources and opportunities to apply.
And in doing so, we want to create experiences along the way that are setting kids up for success. So we do a lot of thinking and planning around what does it mean for a student to be academically prepared or on track for college at 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade? What does it mean for students to be prepared in terms of their character, their emotional maturity, all of those things? How can we ensure that students are on a path and are ready at an age-appropriate level for that? And then what experiences can we expose students to? So I think about, I didn't go on a college visit until I was a sophomore in high school. And our students, by the time they graduate, have probably been on 4 or more college visits as field trips. And kids really enjoy it, right? Like they're at age 10 or younger, students are associating college with fun trips that they've been on, and they're learning about different experiences and different career paths that they can pursue. I will never forget, we visited a college in DC, and there was a whole panel that the Office of Multicultural Affairs had set up. And so there was a student who was pursuing a degree in law, a student who was pursuing a degree in medicine, a student business, everything, a student who was studying to become a teacher. And students were able to ask questions, and just seeing like their eyes light up as they thought about all these different careers that they may have considered or may not have considered before, is really cool. And so if we can ignite that excitement around a dream, then we can drive towards that and help kids see college as a part of that picture.
And we have a lot of graduates who come back and who also share their experiences, or if we are planning to go on a field trip to a college where we know that we have some KIPPsters there. I think about the trip to I believe it's the University of Maryland, where one student took time. He's a football player. Is he in the draft?
He is playing for the Chicago Bears now.
Yeah, playing for the Chicago
Yes.
Bears. Like, he stopped, and took time. That football practice can be excruciating, especially at the collegiate level, just to speak with students. And that is powerful for students to see that there's somebody who's just like them, came from the same neighborhood, similar background, who's able to move, branch out, and still want to come back to the community. All right, so we have a student who went to the University of Maryland. What's his name?
Josh Woods, yeah.
Josh Woods. He took an opportunity to speak with our students who visited the University of Maryland, and we all know that at the collegiate level, practice can be excruciating, exams can be excruciating, and I think that was very powerful for our students to be able to see a young man from Baltimore City who went to KIPP Ujima, and who was able to go off to school, and has also taken the opportunity to come back and to be able to show them that they also have an opportunity to go to college as well.
Yeah, he goes so far as take time out of his busy schedule to send videos back to show to the kids of him on the field, at University of Maryland, encouraging them as they're wrapping up final exams or their state tests and things like that. So the support from graduates of our school who have gone on to do great things is remarkable and really encouraging for our current students to see.
So this is my first rodeo with Baltimore City. I came on board last November, but officially with Baltimore City, I was on the foundation side with KIPP last year. I would say some of the differences that I see with DC and Baltimore overall is just opportunity and access. I think a lot of times, I'm a native Washingtonian, so what I relate to the most here in Baltimore City is the lack of access that students have in certain communities based on your zip code and demographic. And so I've noticed that in the district, there was a huge reform and shift in education to ensure that every child was not left behind, had equity in education, and then also there was an evaluation system implemented. And I see that there are remnants of DC here in Baltimore that are just being strengthened and fine-tuned to ensure that students have access to quality education and quality educators in front of them.
I think I'll compare more to where I grew up, which was just outside of Chicago. And I just think about the issues that we're experiencing, the challenges that our staff and students and families face here sometimes are not challenges. I went to public school, but these are not challenges that are common in other places across the country. And I think about, like, we're having to reduce our school day in half for the next we just made that decision to reduce the school day in half for the next 2 school days. So I would compare to the school system where I grew up, and there are a number of similarities. One key difference that's on my mind right now is some of the disparities and inequities as it pertains to facilities and budgets and things like that. I went to public school, but my public school never had to close for 2 half days like we have to coming up, because we have such an old school facility, and that even with everyone really working hard to get that facility on track, things break, and it seems like we've learned way more about air conditioning units than we ever cared to. But it seems that there's always something, and today our staff and students were sweating in classrooms because it wasn't even that hot outside, but it was very hot in our building. And so that's a key difference that I think about a lot. I think about my first or second year teaching here, I came into the classroom that I was going to have for the year, and I remember the carpeting had a giant hole from some type of burn situation. I don't know what happened there. And just the condition of the classroom in general was not conducive to learning. It wasn't a welcoming space. It wasn't an inviting space. And I just remember thinking I'm going to spend hours, if not days, in here, trying to make this space amenable to what our kids deserve. And that shouldn't happen. Our kids should walk every day into bright, beautiful, welcoming spaces. And the challenges, budgetary challenges, systemic challenges, district level challenges, school level challenges, all contribute to that. So in terms of how does it compare, there are things I think that we do better here than the school system where I grew up in. But then there are also just remarkable challenges that we face that I don't think kids, families, and staff should ever have to face. So that's part of the work, is trying to figure out how to push through that, and how to manage in the short term and solve those problems in the long term.
I would co-sign that wholeheartedly. Now, I also say that in DC, in order to get some of those changes inside of the schools, you saw a lot of parents advocating and really holding the folks in office to the fire in terms of making sure that their students had access to a school building that was warm, that was welcoming, that was inviting, that was free of litter, of rodents, ensuring that students had access to a quality meal throughout the day. So making sure that the meal that students received was something that was going to actually nourish the whole child, and just the different resources that I see sometimes lack here with Baltimore City.
I can't think of any staff members who today let that challenge impede them from delivering and collaborating with kids around learning today, which takes a special person. So we have pretty remarkable staff, and we're very lucky in that way to have a remarkable team and lots of reasons to be optimistic. I hope one day we don't have to push through these challenges, and that our people can just be amazing in a normally climate-controlled building.
Last year, when I came on board, I was hired through the foundation side. So what that meant was that while KIP recognized me in my role as an assistant principal with the school, Baltimore City did not. And so when it came to processing incidents, being able to speak to district level employees with the same access that a district level employee would have as an administrator here, that became a challenge. And so having to navigate and also build relationships become extremely important when you are trying to facilitate some type of change or move within the charter world here in Baltimore. I would say now that I am on board with Baltimore City, I think the biggest challenge is just you have with the school and with your charter is set out has set out as the guiding principles, and then you also have district mandates. And so I know for myself, the change was stark coming from DC, because DC charter schools have full autonomy. And they answer to a separate board, not the school board per se, but a DC charter board who then reports to the school board. And so I can let you speak to a little bit more of some of those challenges, but sometimes that can be difficult because you have to ask the question, are you appeasing what the charter needs, or are you appeasing what Baltimore City needs? And I think why charters were created and developed was to give an outside perspective to what they've already seen happen in systems over time that may not be working, that you may have to follow because it is a law that's put into place, as opposed to looking at how can you make changes that just affect best practice and also student achievement.
Yeah, so the charter landscape here in Baltimore is incredibly different from most other places. In some good ways and some not so good ways. I'd say one thing that I appreciate is that the district does grant us some degree, though not as much as DC, some degree of autonomy, so long as we continue to be accountable for achieving results. So we're going to be measured the same way as other city schools are measured in terms of our students' achievement, our students' attendance, our students' disciplinary records, all those things that other schools would and should be measured for. And as long as we continue to demonstrate that we are getting it right, that when we're not getting it right, we're making plans, adjusting and fixing it, there is a degree of autonomy that's granted to us. More recently, we worked with an office at the district who gave us some autonomy with our science curriculum in the 7th grade, and that meant a lot to our staff because we get our science curriculum for free, and there's PD for that curriculum. So while the district could have been inflexible and said, no, you have to do this curriculum, they grant us some degree of freedom to do what we think is best for our kids. I think the challenge comes when you have small teams of people at the district office trying to manage a giant urban school district, and response times not being quickly, sometimes staff not being paid. That's a problem. But I do think that in the KIPP network, there are 220 plus schools in the KIPP network. And we are either the only or one of very few KIPP schools that operate as a full member of the district, and a fully included, like we are a Baltimore City school, and to a certain extent we wear that with pride, like that. I want us to prove, to be able to say that yes, we can prove what's possible, even given some of the constraints that our traditional public school counterparts face. So, we can not just operate outside of those challenges, but operate within them, and still persevere and achieve the results with our kids that they deserve. So I've seen, just in the relatively short period of time that I've been here, I've seen the district be really interested in some of the things that we're doing here and implement them already. So I think back to last year or 2 years ago, we were doing some work around use of the Eureka Math curriculum. And we were doing some work around, like, how do we look at assessment data? How do we internalize and deeply understand these units from a curriculum that somebody else wrote? And because we were doing this across the board and really developing our teachers as content experts, because we know that will then translate to our students. The district came in and they did a walk, and they tried to observe some of those meetings that we hold, some of those things that we do, that just makes our strong teachers stronger. And they then, from what I understand, utilize that to inform some of their professional development and other ways that they approach things in the math department at the district. So there's a certain degree of that happening already. I think that the high expectations for students across the board, and just this we're never giving up on you type mentality, is something that I would love to see every kid in a Baltimore City school experience. I think sometimes, unfortunately, kids will get the message that a school has given up on them, or that a teacher has given up on them. And what does that do to a 10-year-old or an 11-year-old? And so I just think about, like, we had a meeting just down the hallway a couple of days ago, and the young man had made a big mistake. But we were very clear that, like, the adults at this table will never give up on you. Like, you were going to do that again tomorrow, and, like, we're going to follow up, and we're going to hold you accountable. We're never going to give up on you. And what we were talking to him, he's an 8th grader, we were talking to him about, like, that may or may not be the case in high school. And some of that is just because high schools are different, like, lots of kids. But some of that is because, like, we don't, depending on what high school he goes to, he may have really supportive, caring staff, and he may have staff who are burnt out, who are tired, who have seen a lot of challenges, a lot of turnover, and that staff may not support him the same way. So I'd love for us to be able to say that that is a promise that we make at every Baltimore City school.
Co-sign again. And then also just being intentional about, like, retaining your staff. It's very hard to find good teachers. And I think one thing that we try to do here is invest in our teachers, and also make this a place where they can see themselves growing. If they want to pursue leadership, providing those opportunities for teachers to stay invested and stay inside of the classroom, and supporting students, and also looping with students as well. And I know this year we have several teachers who they started last year with a grade level and moved up with that particular grade level. And the impact that that has on culture inside of the classroom, because those relationships have been built, it furthers the instruction in academics as opposed to a teacher who's learning their students for the first time.
Yeah. And to add to that, that made me think of, I used to be of the mind that, like, we just need to find great teachers and then hope for the best, hope for everybody to stay. I don't think that's what you're saying, but I think what you said, like, the idea of, like, developing and, like, coaching teachers is something that I do think we do at a different level here, as compared to some other schools. And I think that, like, everybody at work wants to feel like they're growing and developing, and they're on, like, they're achieving their professional goals, and they're getting better every day. And we can only promise that if we put time behind that. So we can only, like, our staff will only feel that way and want to stay with us and want to be that familiar face that a graduate of our school can come back and see 10 years from now. That's only going to happen if people are growing, feel like they're growing, like, are part of a development process. And so just making sure that everybody has that experience, that everybody has the opportunity to grow, try new things, go to trainings, things that are going to keep them excited to come to work, so that, like you said, we have a staff that doesn't turn over time and again.
I would say in terms of, like, the professional development that's offered outside with Baltimore City, and ensuring that we can align it with what we offer here at KIPP, so that our teachers have access to quality instructors who are training them on how to be able to be better and effective teachers for our students. That's an investment that I would love to see happen here in Baltimore City with KIPP.
Yeah. I think the changes that are occurring that I would want to see here and nationally are already taking shape. So there's been a really big push, both here and on the national level, for operating not just as schools in spite of a system, but schools that work to equip our students to change that system. So the idea of a school as a social justice school. And that's something that we in Baltimore have taken on and increasingly work in the pursuit of becoming a social justice school, where our students graduate and go on to not just succeed in spite of, but to actively dismantle the systems that create these inequities that we experience. And I think I know that the KIPP Foundation nationally is doing that work too. So So we have professional developments that are offered now. Rhonda and I have both participated in some of those trainings, where there's a lens for how are we becoming that? How are we equipping our students to advocate for themselves? How are we, with an open mind, examining our own policies, systems, programs, priorities in a way that allows us to change? KIPP has evolved quite a bit, and one thing that I have had the opportunity to sit in on is some of the discussions of some of the real early KIPP folks talking about some of the things that used to strategies that used to be used that are no longer used. And I appreciate that it's a reflective organization and that we're always thinking about these things. So I'd say just the idea of like being about social justice and putting time, training, and professional development behind that goal.
I'm a former building rep with the Washington Teachers Union, and from comparison, what I've heard is that Baltimore City has a little bit more teeth and a little bit more bite than the WTU in DC. With that being said, I believe that unions are extremely beneficial in terms of protecting and supporting workers' rights. And I think like that's the basis of a union, is to ensure that you have fair working conditions, equitable working conditions, and that there's a process that for lack of better words, there's a due process that's given to employees if there should be an issue around performance management. I think with unions across the board, there's, especially within DC, when we had the shift, there was this big divide where it became an us versus them. And I think that is a myth that people have about unions overall. I think that effective unions are unions that work in collaboration and in conjunction with school leadership to ensure that teachers are being provided with fair, equitable access to a fair working condition, and also that we are still putting students first, because that's ultimately why we are here. And I know that, there are certain qualms about like, well, you say only students first, and then, you justify everything else that happens in between, and it's no, because I think that any administrator knows that in order for a child to be successful, that teacher has to feel successful. I mean, the research says that a child's self-esteem is going to be impacted by the teacher's self-esteem in the classroom. So my goal is not to come and to make you feel as if you need to perform a certain way every time you see me in the classroom, or because I'm just saying so. These are certain things that are here put into place to help you to grow professionally, to meet those goals, and also to increase your self-esteem, so that when you get in that classroom and you have a student who doesn't even want to look at the text, you can speak genuinely about how, hey, I had struggles myself and I was able to work through these certain things by using these strategies, and I'm here to support you as well. And so with unions, I know there's, again, a lot of people say different things about unions, administration, systems. I think unions and administrators work hand in hand. I just don't see that there's a separation at times, especially within a public school. Now, of course, if it's a full charter and there's some autonomy, I would say even in charters within DC, recognize that you still have to provide an outlet for teachers to be able to express themselves, because the pool of teachers is very small, especially of quality teachers that you find. And so there may have been like a mindset, oh, well, we can expend this particular person. No, you can't. Like, everyone is, they are a human being. They're entitled to dignity and dignity of their workplace. And so you should be working together with one another, not to stall progress and students being able to achieve their goals and dreams, but you should want to work together to ensure that the teacher has what they need, the students have what they need, and leaders, because we are people too, we need certain things too. And so I just think that there's a relationship that when it's healthy, I've seen how unions and with teachers and administrators have been able to work together to bring about and advocate for the changes that we need to see inside of our Baltimore City schools. Or when I was in DC, for example, when we're talking about the quality of an environment, teachers also being able to advocate and writing letters and staging whatever they need to stage in order to ensure that the school is going to be able to run so that their kids can sit in the classroom without seeing mice. Like, these are little things that, teachers and leaders, where there is a union, have been able to work together with and come up with an effective plan to address these concerns.
In my experience with working with the union on this side of things, the union has been really reasonable. So it has in most cases been able to think about both what a teacher needs and what a school needs and kids need, and like that it's not an either or, and to see both sides of that. Because I agree, like our teachers are people, and we have to people in order for our students to thrive. Our teachers have to be supported, and should have certain protections. But in my experience, the union has been really reasonable in working with us. And then I think about more broadly, the district partnered very closely with the union a few years ago to institute a program that I think is wildly beneficial to our kids and to staff, which is the Model Teacher Program. The Model Teacher Program is designed to keep teachers in the city and in the classroom who might otherwise either leave the district or go to pursue a higher compensation through an administrative role, like people who really are gifted educators and want to be in the classroom, but when they start to raise a family, when they start to be a few years in, that they're seeking higher compensation, and they get that. So teachers who are heavily vetted through the application process to become a model teacher are paid salaries that are almost commensurate with administrator salaries. And here, what that has meant is that, and we have a number of model teachers here, we're glad to have a number of model teachers here, what that's meant is that some folks who might have otherwise left us to go take a job as an assistant principal are now still standing in front of kids every day, and that is really powerful. That's one of many examples of where we've seen the union and the district work together to create something that benefits staff, benefits students, benefits families, benefits our city. I would apologize for the traffic outside of our school at Dismissal time.
That's the breakdown.
Yeah,
honestly, that is what a lot of the people who live close by are talking about.
It's congested.
I think a lot of it just stems from misconceptions, like the idea that we believe that we know better and can do better, and so we're just gonna. That's not the goal. The goal is that all kids in Baltimore City, and then more broadly, the foundation's goal is that all kids across the country have access to a high quality education, and puts kids on a path to college. It's not because we think that we can do it better than anybody else. It's because we want to make sure that all kids have that opportunity. I also think that there's when a KIPP school opens in a community, there's sometimes a perception that you're here to take our students from us, and that is never the goal. The other criticism that I hear a lot is this idea of creaming, of only taking the highest performing students from traditional public schools across the district, because we are a district-wide program. Anybody from Baltimore City can enter our lottery and attain an education here. So the criticism is often, oh, well, you're just going to take the highest performing, because you have a brand, people know you, you're going to take the highest performing kids across the district and then just concentrate them in your school. And I can't speak for everywhere, but I can say here in Baltimore, the goal when KIPP Ujima was founded in the early 2000s was that we were going to, in many ways, function as a neighborhood school. So we were, on paper, at first a contract school, and then the law changed and we became a public charter school. But the goal was always to serve a large portion of our student body, serve this community, this immediate community. And so being located in Park Heights, we're proud that a significant portion of our students come from the immediate community. And that's not by accident. When we have recruited students before, we go door to door. Primarily for kindergarten and fifth grade now, but we used to do so for all of our fifth graders, and we were just a fifth through eighth school. And I had the privilege of participating in that, like going door to door and meeting kids, who were rising fifth graders and their families, and they're thinking like, who are these people on our doorstep? But the goal, of course, was like if we want to serve students here and be a neighborhood school, then we need to get out here in the community, and we need to spread the word here. So I think some of it is just you hear things, you read things, and if you're not a member of our school community, or you don't have connections to our school community, you may just not know that. But those are the criticisms that I hear, and I think it's reasonable that people would think that. And I hope that through watching this program or through other means that they would feel different.
To add to that, I would say that with KIPP nationally, there's this and rightfully so, like there are high standards that we have for our students, and that sometimes those high standards are unfair to students. And what I'd like to reassure parents and just anyone that is familiar with KIPP or is looking, should I send my child to a KIPP school? Yes, we have very high standards, but we also have very high support for our students in meeting those standards. And I think with KIPP, one of the things that I really appreciate are these character traits that we try to teach our students around this growth mindset, that nothing is finite, that learning isn't something that you are just born with in terms of intelligence, that you can always get a little bit better. And so, yes, we may hold the standards high, and we are looking for excellence, and we're also there to support so that you can identify how can you get better and take ownership of that learning as well. And I think sometimes that message isn't clear with parents or just outside community members. I think our parents here at the building understand and recognize that we have very high standards, and we also have a lot of support for our students to ensure that they can reach and meet those standards. So anything from coach class after school, taking time into the advisory to really understand our kids, and not just the typical, well, let's just sit around and talk, or it's a homeroom, but let's sit in a circle with one another. Me as an adult, you as the children, and let's be equals, and let's hear one another out so that we can understand, like, how are we processing certain situations and incidents. And I feel like that's one of the most powerful things about KIPP overall that many people they don't see. Oh no! Don't abolish summer vacation. Interesting enough, so there are schools in DC that have these intermittent sessions. So they are a full year school, and so what they'll do is, let's say every couple months, they have 2 weeks built in for a summer vacation or intersession for a winter vacation intersession. And so I've played around with that idea before because I think naturally people just need a break. And this can be a very, stressful and taxing job, especially emotionally, because you're investing and pouring so much into your students, into your families, into the community itself, that you need an opportunity to just kind of recharge, reconnect, and fill your cup back up. I wouldn't say abolish, and that goes for students as well. I would say that it's very important that students have opportunities to engage with material outside of just kind of being at their leisure. And so I know here we try our best to send home a reading packet over the summertime and have students read. And just whatever book you pick up is what you pick up, because it should be about joy and learning and the love for it. And just taking the opportunity to still keep those skills going that they've learned beforehand, because again, there can be a significant loss if the last time that they've seen a piece of literature or a high text has been 2-3 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the research on this one. We've definitely seen it play out, and it's just what we know about learning and how we crystallize knowledge and skills and habits. The idea that we would take this extended break and then come back and just hope for the best can be problematic. I think we do our best. We provide a summer assignment. Our students are thrilled that they have summer homework every year, but we do believe that is important. We've gotten better at what we're doing to curb summer learning loss over time. When I first started here, it was largely just here's the work packet, do this a couple pages a day. More recently, we're integrating more broader experiences with single text for literacy. And then for math, we utilize Khan Academy, which is helpful for over the summer when the teacher isn't working with the students every day. And so kids we don't want kids practicing wrong, like practicing incorrectly all summer long. And so Khan Academy is great as an online video portal where students can get hints. They can watch a video of a teacher working out a similar problem. They can get corrective feedback. So that they're not, just crunching out numbers incorrectly all summer long. So I think it's certainly not perfect, and the school year calendar poses its challenges, but we will continue to do our best. We also try and connect our students with opportunities over the summer. So this doesn't pertain necessarily to our current students, but the past few years we've had our high school, graduates of our school who are in high school, participate in extended learning opportunities over the summer, where they're learning about, there's a cohort of rising 12th graders who are doing some academic work, but they're also learning about what does it look like for me to transition and plan for college, to apply to college, to all of the financial aid, all of those things that kids need to be thinking about as a 12th grader, and in being engaged in that or another meaningful activity over the summer. So we try and connect kids with opportunities, but it's certainly always a work in progress to make sure that everybody's summer vacation isn't just Fortnite and
it's all Fortnite. And with our summer school, our students come back 2 weeks earlier than other students within Baltimore City, and so they come back for half-a-day sessions. And what we try to do during those times is, of course, we want to review routines and procedures around culture for the building, but we also want to make sure that we can dig deep and figure out how much summer loss did we have, what pre-skills do we need to go back and reteach from if you're coming into the 6th grade, your 5th grade year, so that when we do implement the 6th grade curriculum and the standards, you're being taught at grade level.
Yeah, and we're able to use some of that time, those 2 weeks before the rest of the city comes back, to get to know our students, to build routines, to build relationships, so that we're at a place once the full school year starts, so we can really hit the ground running.
I'm excited. I'm excited about this year. We've had a very strong start this year with our students and our staff. Our teachers come back about 2 weeks prior to Baltimore City teachers, and so we have an opportunity to do professional development to really get our teacher bones back in session, because that break is very good and relaxing, and sometimes you have to reset and recharge. And so we've had an opportunity from the day one to just hit the ground running with our staff. And our staff have shown such an eager and a commitment to wanting to really pull students in and get them excited about their learning. This year we're implementing a new curriculum called KIP Weekly. And so to piggyback on the social justice theme of KIP, KIP Weekly was designed to ensure that students had access to equitable books, but books of people from color, from different genres, so that they're not just simply learning about or reading Shakespeare, but they have an opportunity to read from authors and from different genres that represent themselves and issues that they may be facing here in Baltimore. And I've seen our students get excited. We also have an excellence block, so we're really trying to implement this joy for reading, which in the age of technology gets replaced with Instagram and Facebook and other different forms of social media. But to see our students really excited to come in and to grab a book. Today I was in a social studies classroom where students were just reading the entire 30 minutes, and it was really hard for them to get disengaged from the book, to have them put it down, and to see them wanting to grab a sticky note, write their name on the sticky note. This is my book. Can I check the book out? These are things that I don't know if people typically think that our students are excited about, just based off of perception, but things that we know about our kids. And just to see how our teachers are working with our students to let them know, this is who you are. You have the ability to dream, and to dream so much more bigger than what other people may try to put onto you. So I'm excited. I've just seen so many different great things this year, especially in our advisory program. I can keep going. I'll stop. But our advisory program, I did a walkthrough today of 5th through 8th grade. And again, just to see our teachers taking the opportunity to sit down with our students and to build those relationships. It's very easy as a former teacher, and sometimes as an administrator, you're seeing this body that's a little bit smaller than you, that has a little, squeaky voice, and you're asking them to do something, and they're like, well, it's miscommunication at times. And so really taking the time to say, okay, let's let me see you as an equal, because there's nothing that really separates us but age and experience. And so once we're able to wrap our minds around that, we can start having conversations where we can really understand each other and remain in dialogue. And that's been powerful to see throughout this year.
You covered.
Sorry, I was like just excited.
Co-sign. I agree. I'm really excited for this year too. One of the other, in addition to literacy and kids' books in hands, like excited about the books that they're reading, another priority of ours is pride in our school. And pride in Ujima, our name, it means collective work and responsibility. And what does that look like for us to operate like that? And then pride is our statement of values, so perseverance, respect, integrity, dream, and excellence. How do we make that real? How do we shout out kids for exhibiting our school values and returning to those things? And then even there's an element of that that's about like understanding our history, right? There's some things that make us really different and unique that we should be proud of. And how do we tell those stories and make sure that kids know that? Even if we're not in our first 2 years anymore. So there's this a real push for Ujima pride. You'd asked about like the longer term vision. One thing which you touched on a little bit with advisory and the way in which we interact with kids is continuing our commitment to learning about the use of restorative practices. Which is a real buzzword right now in education, but like we've seen that like if we understand it, if we implement it with fidelity, we've seen tremendous outcomes already, and we're very new to it. So we're excited to continue to learn from other schools that are further along this path. But it's something where a student who makes a mistake is not only given, here's your consequence. Now go back to class. It's here's your consequence because we're going to be held accountable here. But also, how can you restore this harm? What can you do to fix any of the issues that might have arisen? So seeing our kids step up, we had some 8th graders model this for our 5th graders. Actually, our 5th through 7th graders, they stood in front of every group, 5th, 6th, and 7th, and they modeled for them, as the leaders of our school, they modeled for them how to fix a mistake. Because that's hard. That's hard for adults, right? Like to apologize, to restore harm, to make things right. And so if we can equip our kids with feeling comfortable with that, knowing how to do that through restorative practices, then we're positioning our kids to be successful in high school and beyond. And the last thing that I'd say, like further down the road and just in a continual path, is I want our school to be a place that's joyful. I want our school to be a place where kids are smiling, kids are laughing, where energy is positive, where positive messages can be seen all throughout the building and heard all throughout the building. And so when I look at what's going really well in our building, things we can learn from other schools, I often am gravitating towards these examples of how do we really and truly become a positive institution. The kids are running to come to school in the morning, are excited, and not just because of the incentive or the field trip, right? We know the kids will be excited about those things. But what are the things that we can do on a daily basis to just ignite that flame and keep it burning for our kids? So they're excited.
And we have a number of after-school programs this year. New programs that are coming here to the building, programs that have already been in existence, because we want our students to feel invested in the building and to have that love and that joy. And we know that students only feel invested when they feel like they have connection here. And oftentimes that can be seen through some of those after-school programs. But yes, throughout the day, just knowing that my teachers are here for me, and this is a place where you just never know what may happen. We can have a celebration for achieving our dreams, achieving our goals, meeting excellence. We can also have a celebration because, hey, we need a celebration.